Hello, I'm Ryan McEachern, and welcome to our special budget preview edition of MSTA Canada The Dig. In this three-part series, we will be discussing the upcoming federal budget and the impact it may have on the exploration and mining sector. Recently, U.S. President Joe Biden announced a $2 trillion infrastructure plan, quoting, "This is the moment to reimagine and rebuild a new economy." And with climate change, net zero economies, critical minerals, EV markets, and secure supply chains as key themes, what will Canada's federal budget have in store for our mining ecosystem? For expert analysis, we have turned to Ian London, Executive Director from the Canadian Critical Minerals and Metals Alliance, Brendan Marshall, Vice President of Mining Association of Canada, and Jeff Killeen, Director, Policy and Programs from the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada. Before we move on, just one quick note to our viewers is to subscribe to our YouTube channel to get access to all episodes of The Dig. And you can follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter at Mining Suppliers. Today is part one of our three-part series with special guest Ian London, Executive Director from the Canadian Critical Minerals and Metals Alliance. Critical minerals is certainly a key part of the solution to answering climate change and the net zero economy. But this is more than just about critical minerals. It's about an opportunity to build back better, the economy of Canada. Let's dig in now with Ian London. Hi, Ian. Welcome to The Dig.
Good to be here.
Excellent. So, all this week is about what's happening next Monday, and that is the release of the federal budget. And, we're kind of putting a focus on that. And I'm really glad to have you on the show today to talk about what the Canadian Critical Minerals and Metals Alliance has, what their expectations are. So let's dig right into it right now. What are you expecting or hoping to hear on this speech Monday?
Actually, hoping is probably the better word. A wise man once told me, "Don't expect things, so then you're less disappointed, or you get excited when you hear it." The critical materials is actually more than just a critical materials story. It's actually an industrial strategy for Canada. We speak to climate change. We speak to clean technologies. Next week's an important one in terms of Canada makes a commitment to that. It has talked that story, but to industrialize it, it has to, hopefully, as we expect or strive for, is that it's recognized that materials is what makes up clean technologies, be it computers, be it electric vehicles, be it cell phones, be it the cloud. The cloud is actually a hardware infrastructure, and to build that, many of those technologies are based on critical minerals and materials. So that would probably be the first thing I would want to hear, is Canada's committed to that, it recognizes that, and is committed to building it. The rest of the world is, and accelerating that. Canada is advancing the agenda, but at a different pace than, shall we say, I would like to see.
And that's a good comment to make. We've heard from President Biden administration and what their vision is for a $2 trillion 10-year infrastructure vision. And it kind of brings up what we were talking about earlier before the show in the critical mineral supply chain. And it's more than just having the minerals and being able to extract them. So maybe we should kind of talk a little bit. What do you mean by a critical mineral supply chain?
I'm going to look at it from two ends, because I'm a demand pull guy. For every mineral or for any commodity, you actually need a customer. So we've got to strengthen the demand side and incent it. What is a supply from? If you look at it from the upstream, the mine, which is many of your viewers look at it, it's minerals in the ground. Battery makers don't buy minerals. You have to look down that chain. You take minerals, you make concentrates. Concentrates make metals. Metals make components. Battery makers buy components, or they buy chemicals, which are already constituted. And at the end of the day, automakers buy batteries. So when I look at the supply chain, is how do we connect the demand side and incent it and accelerate it as our American friends and our European friends, and for that matter, folks in China. You want to buy an internal combustion engine car, you wait 10 years. You want an electric vehicle, you walk up into the shop and you get it. They've incented that. They're moving that forward. But to build those vehicles, You need materials. They need batteries. Batteries needs chemicals and anodes, cathodes. Back to we need minerals out of the ground. And Canada should, what I'm hoping for is Canada, which has the capability, will flesh out that supply chain. Some of it does on its own, some of it in partners, can secure those value added jobs in Canada and build that supply chain.
Right. And so, yeah, as you're saying, we're talking about the minerals in the ground right down to, we'll focus down this one value chain, which is the automotive assembly plants in Southern Ontario. And everything in between is really for ours to actually develop and become from a domestic standpoint. And
if I may just interject on that,
sure.
And you say that in automotive, people would normally say, oh, that's the battery. It's more than the battery. It's the electronics in the vehicle. We have to lightweight those materials. Scandium aluminum alloys can use to strengthen that. So there's a whole suite of these minerals which Canada possesses, which feeds that auto sector. The same would hold true for wind turbines, and the same would hold true for medical supply technologies, etc. Just wanted to clarify that point.
Well, and thank you for doing that, Ian. And so let's talk a little bit about how we can kind of incentivize like this demand pull concept. What can we do, or what can the government do to stimulate that?
A couple of things they can do, and which we've been advocating for, is one, continued, as our American friends are doing, and I'll just tie it in with the North American thing, because that seems to have caught some fire, is incent somehow through discounts or through support for electric vehicles. And I'll just use the automotive sector as an example. Well, people will buy electric vehicles if they had a charging infrastructure. I live in an older condominium building. We would have to put chargers in there. That can be incentive, which creates value-added jobs, technologies to manage that. So that would be that side. We do need to bring in some manufacturers or reshore some manufacturers. Well, we've just made a major commitment into auto plants, the assemblers in Oshawa, Windsor, Oakville. How do we encourage those majors to bring in some of their supply chain into Canada? It also requires, if I may add, is not only the process technologies, for the mineral side, how do we advance those projects? So that takes some regulatory changes. We have, Canada is fabulous in terms of its ESG commitments to and can do it. The timelines, unfortunately, are very long. How do we streamline those processes? But once you get it out of the ground, we do need to develop cost competitive, reasonably cost competitive processing plants. Requires research and development to do that. Or a demonstration plant. What's a demonstration plant? Well, we've tested in the lab, it works. But we all know is when you get into engineered projects and you get there, as they get bigger, so do the problems. It doesn't quite behave that way. We resolve them all, but it takes attention and it takes influence. In support of that, we also need young minds, capabilities in the academic sector. One, the PhDs could solve today's problem, but I'm not gonna run those plants. The next generation, those folks who are now graduating or soon to graduate, we want to get them up to speed on its unique chemistries and opportunities. Gives you an idea of how we could actually build those supply chains and accelerate it.
Well, and I think, I had a couple of questions down here and you nailed them all. Is to your point, this processing gap that we seem to have and creating the incentive for us to develop and support, like maybe from a private public partnership aspect to really drive the scalability of processing, because that seems to be a bit of the the piece that was missing, especially that we're seeing with support down in the States, what they're doing in the United States. So, and then you talked about, of course, the future of the workforce and what they have to do there. So there's a lot of opportunity here as a nation building exercise, I think, for the government to seize here. It's big, it's audacious, but it's, as you point, I think is really doable.
There was, if I may add, you actually touch on a good point. There was a report done by what is it called? Innovation, Science, and Economic Development, issued in mid-December, done by the Industry Strategy Council. It was commissioned, and it talked about a bold aspirational, and intentional industry strategy. When you read that report, you will see critical materials, minerals and metals, and other composite as critical, as integral to that entire strategy. It rings bells. It works. But I mentioned the key words: bold, aspirational, and intentional. The other thing you just highlighted was private-public partnership. Government cannot do it alone. As a matter of fact, this is a big, bold initiative, and some difficult decisions will have to be made. Industry and business are actually in a stronger position by culture to make some of those difficult calls. So what we've also looked forward to is, can we establish a critical material office or task team of senior executives with a mission, a mandate, get these supply chains built. Yes, they'll have to pick some winners. They have to pick some losers. Understand, but the bolder aspiration and the possibilities for this country, enormous. We should not be the hewers of wood, drawers of water. We should not be taking minerals out of the ground and shipping them offshore or out of the country over the border for somebody else to process, and then we buy the finished product. That value add is where the profits are made, the technologies are developed, the new technologies are developed. One thing about critical materials, somebody once asked me, well, where's the demand? I said, well, I outlined where the demand is, but that's only 50% of the demand. Well, what about the future demand? Some of it hasn't been invented yet. But as we've noticed in the last couple of years, it's going to be. We're doing this call right now from 2 remote locations with a server somewhere. I don't even know how it works, but it works. New technologies built upon hardware, built upon critical material supply chains.
Well, I think, Ian, this is a great way to kind of wrap it up. We'll definitely have to have you back from a post presentation of the budget and see what we really hear from them. So
looking forward to celebrating. Hopefully, not shedding a tear.
Thank you very much, Ian. Really appreciate you having you on the dig.
Thank you very much, my friend.
I'd like to thank Ian London for joining us on part 1 of our 3-part special budget preview edition of MSTA Canada The Dig. Next up is part 2 with Brendan Marshall from the Mining Association of Canada, where we discuss how government investment in infrastructure will drive the supply of critical minerals. Until then, I'm Ryan McEachern. Take care and stay safe.